there's a bit of gravitas that comes with being able to afford a billboard. The hypothesis that we had is that we saw increased conversion performance because customers were more likely to trust us at that pointy end. Yeah, so that was a complete surprise.
Hey there, James here, and you're listening to the Own the Moment podcast, the show where we explore the complex and always evolving landscape of marketing, advertising, and branding, and try to get to the bottom of what it means to be a truly memorable brand. The Own the Moment podcast is brought to you by Como Technologies, a self-service, complete customer engagement platform that helps you cut through the noise to truly connect with your customers and retain and grow those connections over time. With Como, you can build and deploy new campaigns, activations, promotions, and programs in days, not months, and our software is used by some of the world's biggest consumer brands, from Heineken to Budget, Goodman Fielder, Foxtel, JLL, Williams Racing, and McDonald's. Learn more at como.tech. When the pandemic hit in early 2020, there was probably no worse business to be in than travel. But that's exactly where today's guest found himself during that very bizarre spring of 2020. Leigh Barnes is the Chief Customer Officer at Intrepid Travel, a global travel and tours company born in Australia that has over the last 30 years built a very significant business, one that is fast approaching $1 billion in annual revenue. Staring into the abyss that was not actually knowing when travel would return, Leigh and his team took the COVID-era mantra of never waste a good crisis to heart and drastically shifted their marketing strategy and budget away from performance marketing and into PR, storytelling, and top-of-funnel brand building. The basic idea? Build a brand that travelers would want to engage and connect with even if they couldn't travel. A couple of years on, and the results are pretty astonishing. Branded searches and traffic are up 40%, and direct bookings, as opposed to bookings via third-party travel agents, have risen from 20 to 60%. This means Intrepid is a far more profitable business today than it was pre-pandemic, when it was, in Leigh's own words, addicted to the short-term hamster wheel of PPC and paid marketing. Leigh is a brilliant storyteller, and this episode is packed with tons of valuable nuggets and insights that will help any consumer marketer understand how to balance long-term brand building with short-term promotions and activations. I hope you enjoy the show. Leigh Barnes, thank you for coming on the show.
James, thanks for having me, man. Hopefully it's a good yarn.
Yeah, so look, I want to start by talking about this big shift that you guys at Intrepid made. I think it was about 6 months ago now. There was a big article in MI3, and you talked about this shift from performance to brand marketing. You talked about a punch-in-the-face moment. But before we get to all of that, tell me a bit about your career, how you got to where you are today, and how did you become such a big fan of performance marketing?
Oh, good luck and good management. And I never thought saying punch in the face moment will get quoted so much. You talk on these things, and one thing gets pulled out and it's been mentioned, but everyone at work's been like, oh, do you get punched in the face? So it's funny the things you say. So hopefully I say something suitably ridiculous in this conversation as well. But how did I get where I am? As I said, bit of good luck and bit of good management. I got into travel marketing after a massive sea change. I pretty much had done... was in business development for sort of call center technologies, for want of a better word. And I was about 27, 28, was, doing a good job, getting paid well, but I was like, I really don't like this. I was clean shaven, rocking a suit, a bit different than what you see now.
Love it.
And I totally reboot. I basically did online courses around PPC, social media, performance marketing, really, and got a gig at Peregrine, one of Intrepid's brands, about 15 years ago now, as search and social media coordinator. Yeah, so I was turning on PPC for the first time, starting Facebook and Twitter accounts. So if there's any F-ups for the brand 15 years ago, it's on me. But that's where I got my chops. And then I was lucky enough at Intrepid to be given lots of opportunities to grow with the company. I moved over to Toronto about 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer.
Wow.
Now, and led the Americas business for Intrepid for about 5 years, and was able to grow it from about $10 million business to a $100 million business. And that was awesome. I wonder why I come home sometime. I was able to go to New York, Chicago, Mexico City, all that, stuff. And being at the center of the marketing world, it was pretty awesome. And I've come back to Australia. So been very lucky and privileged and Intrepid, and just been given lots of different opportunities over the journey. So a bit of good luck and a bit of good management.
Yeah, and look, for those that don't know, really quickly, what is Intrepid? What do you guys do? What are you all about?
Yeah, James, remiss of me not to start with the sales pitch on the company, so people know what I'm talking about. I should always lead with that. My boss will probably give me a, what are you doing, mate? Yeah, Intrepid's the world's largest provider of adventure tours. Yeah, so we'll do everything from hiking Everest Base Camp, sailing Cuba, food and culture tour in Vietnam. Big focus on small groups, so you'll be going with normally in groups of 10 to 15. Big focus on experiences. You'll go, you'll meet the local people, eat the food, drink the drink, dance the dance, and we try and do that as sustainably as possible. We're not always going to be able to have a positive impact, but we do everything we can to mitigate our negative. And we're Australian-owned and operated company. Started 35 years ago. Still majority owned by the founders, our staff, and then also a French investment firm as well. And yeah, we're coming out of COVID now, kicking and screaming, and right back on track after a pretty brutal couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about COVID, because I assume for you guys that was literally like the hell freezing over moment. And a lot of what you guys did with this campaign, which I want to dig into today, Travel is Back for Good, was sort of shift your strategy from performance to brand. But talk about COVID. What was that like, internally? I can only imagine, but...
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, I use the term punch in the face. It was probably more of like a mental depression. It was so brutal. We went from our biggest month ever in January as a business to basically shutting operations 2 weeks later. I remember I was in Toronto and my boss effectively calling me and my wife being like, they're two different people, by the way, calling me and being like, I think you need to get the hell home really, really quickly. And, I got home and a week later, we were sitting around our CEO, James Thornton's office, kitchen table, making the decision to halt operations. It was actually the night of my engagement party too. Like I was like in the middle of this, getting ready to go. And it was brutal. We had to get, thousands of customers home safe. We had to refund millions of dollars back to people. We had to reduce the workforce absolutely drastically. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I remember spending a day basically, making people redundant. I really had blacked it out. I just went home and slept and probably still can't, still really tough and raw. And it was hard. We spent 2 years before we were able to get cash positive again. We had to go out and get investment to keep the company moving in the right direction. But on the positive side, I know there's, never waste a crisis was probably one of the most used terms, unprecedented and all that sort of stuff. Right. But, one of the things, and I speak about this, was part of that marketing punch in the face is like your traffic just vanishes. Yeah, because we weren't spending money on performance marketing anymore. So like overnight, you're like, why are people interested in Intrepid? And it's because of the brand. If you took away our people, you took away the trips, we won't be able to operate trips. Why were people still interested? And it was because we'd built a brand over 35 years that stood for something, that was going to say things, that was going to move in a certain direction. And that's why people were still coming to engage with us. And that was probably like an aha moment. We were like, all of our traffic just plummeted. It was mainly organic. So people knowing, looking, engaging in what we were doing already. And that's sort of one of those moments where we were like, bloody hell, we need to make sure that we are continuing to do the right stuff. And we use that as a lightning moment to, rebrand the business, double down on great stories and entertainment for our customers, really, continue the great purpose work we do around sustainability. So, yeah, it was horrible. It was tough, but it also shone a light on the direction we needed to move forward with the business.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Just before we dig into Travel is Back and all of that rebranding, how long did you guys stop trips for?
I think off the top of my head now it was about 2 to 3 months that trips completely stopped. But then if you remember, different parts of the world started to open up. Like the USA continued to operate and you could still travel. But to be honest, we were going from running, thousands of departures to like a couple.
Wow.
So we were still running trips largely for American customers because they were able to travel. But, we, go to normally 120 different countries. We've 3,000 different itineraries, hundreds of thousands of customers each year. That was down to like a couple of trips, completely different. We didn't get back to those volumes of operation until, earlier this year.
Wow. And so prior to the pandemic, tell me, like, what was the marketing? I mean, I assume very performance driven, but tell me, was it sort of, ads, PPC, tell me what was sort of the bread and butter of the marketing department prior to the pandemic?
The bread and butter was PPC and industry. Yeah, so
right.
Industry being OTAs and travel agents, and PPC being the shelf of the internet, the shopping shelf of the internet. It was probably at various points somewhere around 80% of our budget was going to the PPC. We did do a lot of PR. We've always been quite a rich storytelling business because we do a lot of amazing trips. People want to learn about women's only expeditions. They want to understand how they can be more sustainable. So we've always done a lot of PR, but so much of our marketing spend was traditionally through travel agents and through PPC, and a lot of that then was performance driven insofar as campaigns. X amount off this trip, this destination is the time to go. Really too, in the way when we did do brandy stuff, it was more destination led. Now's the time to go to Peru. Now's the time to go to Morocco. So it was always probably campaign performance driven activation, as opposed to this is Intrepid, this is our story, this is what we stand for, and trying to build those mental associations so people will remember us, they have a good emotion, and they go shop for us. They would basically just coming in at the end of the funnel, walking into a travel agent, or going onto the internet and typing Peru, and or going to the agent saying Peru tours. So that was pretty much the makeup of it about 2019 leading into the pandemic.
Yeah. And I guess, I must admit, I was just looking at the revenue numbers for Intrepid. It's, the last number you threw out was, 370 million last year, and you're projecting a lot more this year and aiming towards 1 billion by, I think, 2025 or 2026. So it's a
it was probably 1 billion before the pandemic to 25, 26. We'll probably get there about 29 now, just for that couple year gap. But yeah, we're on track for about.
It's a huge business.
Yeah, and I think for an Aussie business too, it's like we're quite global. We have offices in 40 locations around the world. We sell out of the UK and US markets. America will probably be our largest source market in the next couple of years. It'll overtake Australia, which has been traditionally. So yeah, we're growing fast and putting up some big numbers, which is great.
It's amazing. Yeah, and what I want to get at is performance was clearly working for you, right? It's 80% of the budget, but the business is huge, it's growing. Tell me, was it really just COVID that was that moment for you when, traffic obviously dropped, you didn't have that sort of bottom of the funnel intent? Was that the sort of the turning point for you guys where you realized we have to do something else? Was this shift to brand marketing? We're going to dig into that campaign, I promise. But was that really just that COVID moment, or...
Look, this is probably more interesting than the campaign anyway, James. So feel free to talk about it as long as you want. There's probably more interesting stuff in here. It was, we'd been discussing it beforehand, arguing it. We knew we should have been doing it, but it always came back. You're in the leadership room, and you're like, but we've got to hit this month's target. And we'd always be like, but we know we should be getting more people to know about Intrepid. Fundamentally, that as a human. If you get invited to a party from someone you don't know compared to someone you do know, you're more likely to go to the party from someone you do know. It just makes sense, right?
Yep.
But sometimes you are going to go to the party of the person you don't know because you've got nothing to do on a Saturday night. So you know that you logically have to get more people to know you, but you also know that you'll pick up people that don't know you because they just have a necessity and need. They want to go to X place. So there was always those debates, and we'd always wanted to do it. We'd put off our rebrand about 3 times, and I'd been involved in various iterations of that for about 5 years beforehand, and it was always that thing when times got tough, got dropped. It wasn't prioritized, and we're always having those conversations. So yeah, it was that punch in the face. The pandemic made it more real, but let's not say it was overnight, and there was lots of conversations, lots of debate. I've sort of in my mind told myself that was the line in the sand. It was probably the line in the sand that gave me the stick to be able to go, yes, we should do it, and give us the space to go make it happen. But I'm not pretending. We argued about this all the time. And it wasn't a linear. It was it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're going to change the spend. We're going to do these things. But COVID gave us the clear runway to make it happen. The other thing I'd say too, and I think you've noted on, we're already performing well. What are the things that are coming through now is we're more profitable. will be more profitable this year. So profit will be up by being one of the levers. And the other thing is we've got more direct business. So more customers are booking with us direct than they did previously. So we're about 50% up this year on direct revenue compared to 2019. And overall, what does that mean? In about 2019, we're about 70% industry, 30% direct. So customers direct with us. We're now about 60% direct, 65% direct, 35, 40% industry. We'll see where that gets to at the end of the year. So the numbers and where we're moving are still great, but the performance of the direct business and our profitability are outstretching what they did previously.
Yeah, and I mean, I just recently reread the long and short of it. I mean, that's the sort of the exact idea, right? Is, you know, how do you sort of build that mental awareness, mental availability? And it sounds like you guys were stuck in something that comes up over and over again, which is you get stuck in that short term loop of performance, which is, as you say, it's a very measurable, repeatable system for hitting budget, right? And you know, to jump off that cliff and convince your boss that like we're going to go make a $2 million TV ad, we don't know what it's going to give us. I mean, that's a fucking scary thing to do for a marketer, right?
Yeah, and it's still not perfect. You know, we've got Cyber Sale coming up, and that's an important driver for our business. You know, and we still have to get everything right from a performance point of view to make sure that drives, because there's customers out there. And we still have some of those challenges. It's not always perfect. I think too many times, like these articles and stuff get written, you're either perfect to brand, you're perfect to performance.
Yeah.
It's messy. Sometimes you've got to go all out to get the available fish that are in the ocean, and you've got to do all the performance stuff. You've got to catch them. You've got to be available. People have to make it easy to book. You've got to do that stuff. It's not saying that you don't. And then you've also got to drive more in. And it's always messy. There's always tension coming back and forth. And I think quite often it's sold as like, I came in and solved it from a brand point of view, or I got the performance to do X, you know, and it swaps because so many CMOs come in and change. You know, you come in with a creative brand, remit, or you come in on a performance remit, and you might smash your performance because the last CMO did all the brand stuff and all you're doing is capturing it. So it's always messy and goes back and forth in these interesting ways. But, you know, fundamentally, I think now the business, I used to have to argue for it. Now the business comes and demands it, which creates its own set of problems and wanting all these, you know, more assets, more words written, more design.
Fascinating.
But then we also have, you know, if our competitor set and these other, you know, industries dropping their prices, we also need to play in that game. So there is always tension between striving forward long term, but you've got to make sure you pay the bills today. And I think that has to be, you know, forefront. You can't just do all this cool stuff and it's not delivering, you know, today and into the future.
Yeah. Do you think, do you sense that it's a trend in marketing? I know that, like, just in research for this, Airbnb went out, I think maybe it was during the pandemic, you know, a similar sort of story, right? Like, we're going all in on brand, all in on storytelling. Is it something that you're sensing across marketing more generally? Do you think we're sort of entering a new era where maybe brand is sort of getting more of its dues, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're getting a rebalancing, like, you know, that,
right.
Yeah, you've got to spend on performance, but it's not the whole shop. You've still got to entertain. You've still got to help people remember you. Like, life's full on and busy, you know, and how the hell do you get your brand in there that makes people remember or give a crap about who the hell you are? So I think there's probably been that realization. And I think what we've seen too, the proliferation of direct-to-consumer brands running off that social media, PPC.
Right.
I think the cost of that is going to be too much. I think you're able to get those leads very cheap. And I think you'll see now just a balancing of brands getting it right. And you can see, you know, we probably move in similar, like, reading circles online and whatnot, but you just see a proliferation now of Bennett, Ritson, and Sharp that wasn't there 5 years ago. Probably wasn't even I reckon during some point in the pandemic, I feel like there was a switch. Right. Maybe I feel like something changed, but these guys have been writing stuff for, you know, 15 years. But some of it was maybe put off as snake charmer or snake oil salesman early on, and now it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's everywhere. Maybe I'm just moving in different circles, but, you know, the Tourism Australia campaign that recently, you know, when it launched around the kangaroo and all that sort of stuff, it's flying. You know, visitors to Australia up, I think 20%, the latest report. And Ritson just did an article with Susan speaking about that, and I don't know, like, and they used a lot of those principles from those people that we've just mentioned. So I think there's a rebalancing, but I also think that maybe not those entrepreneur direct
Right.
Some of the Garvey sort of guys that were like out there doing all this before, like that sort of slowed down. And it's the principles of marketing: do all the right things over and over again, do the right thing. Know who your customer is, be entertaining, make it easy for customers to book. All of that's come back into vogue, which I think is I think that's right.
Yeah. Well, it's the 4 Ps, right? Like the stuff we all learnt in school. I mean, it's all still relevant. It's funny you say that about brand coming into vogue, because I think one thing I'm sensing is that definitely brand is coming into vogue, but you said something on another podcast, which was like brand marketing still needs to show measurable results, right? Like, I don't know if you follow John James on LinkedIn. He's like this controversial marketing thinker in Australia. Yeah. And he's great because he said, like, so many marketers, they just do brand because it feels like less scrutinized. It's sort of like, it's less measurable. You can always push it away as like, we're building awareness. What's your take on all of that? How do you do brand, but at the same time be very much open to scrutiny and performance and ROI? Because I guess in some sense I feel they're a little bit different, or like I guess maybe historically brand has felt more or less connected to performance.
Yeah, I have an interesting take. I reckon performance gets away with it because it is measurable, right? Because because you can measure it, it's like, oh, it's working. Is it working because you spent more, or is it working because it actually works? Right. And I find this, because it does, you can attribute it, it gets to hide behind these last click attributions. Like, it hides behind the fact that it's measurable. I find I have to originally, once we started on the journey, I had to do a lot more work to get people to believe around the brand stuff. But you also have to put in railguard metrics to show that you're doing the right thing. So, with a lot of our above the line buys and advertising, or, what we've done, you'll see us hopefully around Melbourne and Sydney at the moment with out of home, billboards, newspaper, etc., is we want to see increase in organic branded search terms from those areas. Right? Yep. Simple. So we know that we want to have a certain amount of reach leading into our biggest sales periods to give us confidence to know we've got enough customers to hit those revenue numbers. So there is key brand things that you want to see. The other thing that happens when you do brand is your performance works better. Now, if you don't take that into consideration, your performance team's going, I'm doing a great job. But reality is, it could have been the PR article, it could have been the speech their CEO did on, at a big event. It could be the ad that someone walked past on the street. There's all of these other things that then performance marketing doesn't attribute and hides behind. But it goes, we've got the last click. So I think it gets an easier ride. I think it hides behind the deluge of numbers. And this is from someone I started, as I said, that was my bread and butter, and I was a bit naive to the world. I'd be like, just give me more money and I'll get more sales. But, if your brand's not known, if you're not trusted, people don't know you. When they go to look for the product, sure, they'll look at you, but you'll be just down to price. And if they don't know you, they're not going to trust. And holiday's a big thing. And humans are irrational. And if they have some level of, I know this brand and feel trustworthy, they're more likely to purchase. So, yeah, I think that they both can hide behind the numbers, but you've got to be able to tell a story to your leadership, your people, and you've got to be able to show how it works. Where we've seen, for us, it's been increase of traffic and bookings from the areas we're doing it. It's enabled us to highlight the products that we do want to sell. We're seeing profitability come through. So that's one of those metrics that I'll be talking about. I'm also seeing more people do word of mouth, so more people talking about us, and also to making the brand physical. One of the big challenges that we have is it's almost like a ghost brand. No one's wearing Intrepid. Yeah, it's not a pair of shoes, it's not speakers, it's a trip. And, so much of marketing is that brand experience that I can see the thing. So we've been doing a lot of work to show that we are physically available. Like the branding on Trip now is a lot more present. We are out in a lot of places to show the red and the Intrepid so people can see us and build those memory structures where we weren't doing that before. You can only find us at a travel agent or on the website. Yeah, so how is someone going to remember that? So, and it's not linear. There's all these messy parts of it that go into to making it. And also, I think one of the cool things we're seeing is marketers that know their shit, right? And there's a bit of gut feel in this being proven, and what's right. Yeah, you're a professional. Like in so many other businesses or professions, if you've been doing it for a while, people trust your opinion. Yeah, but we've gotten to this point 5 years ago that if somebody else could show you the numbers, you can get a number to tell you any story. They were getting outranked, but now there's like fundamentally, no, people need to know who you are to purchase. Like that consciously makes sense. But at some point we were believing the point, oh, it's fine. As long as they can find you on the internet, you're going to be okay.
Right. Yeah, and it's like you say, it's this sort of false economy, I think, which is really interesting. So I want to go back, Leigh, to the big brand campaign post-COVID, which was called Travel is Back for Good. You talked about these 3 bits, which I wrote down, rebranding the business, doubling down on stories, and then leaning into that purpose piece. Talk to me a bit about where did the insight come for Travel is Back? Talk me through some of the elements of the story, and obviously we'll get onto results. But I'm curious as to sort of the starting point. Where did it come from? How was that process? What's the insight?
Yeah. So we worked with an agency, South by Southwest, a bunch of a team based in Fitzroy in Melbourne. And we probably had this in the can about 6 months before it came out, because it was in that not horrible time. It was it's opening, it's not opening, it's happening, it's not. Oh God. And we were at the point where we were probably more than a lot of our competitors out there talking and still being an active business. We hadn't completely shut down. We kept people on. We were trying to show. And what we were trying to say is the point was travel is back. It's back, like good, but also travel should be back better. Like you should have used this time to make it more sustainable, more inclusive, doing more of the right things. And it came from the idea that at that point, everything was so negative about travel, about the world. And we wanted to jump the wave and get out first to say it's back, and it's back for good, both in the literal sense, like it's for good, it's coming back and it's going to be good. And also too, we didn't want to make it just about us. It's like travel. Like we're out there saying travel's back. So to make it bigger than just Intrepid, that, because we needed a healthy sector. We don't operate in a silo. We needed travel to be back as a company for us to grow and succeed. And so we wanted to have something that also was like, not just us, like to saying if we were advertising and putting that big billboard out, that travel's back. So customers and people would be, oh yeah, I can go travel. It doesn't have to be Intrepid, but I can go to that place, do this. So that was like some of the insights into it.
Yeah, it's clever.
And the hard thing was getting the timing right. Because I remember with our head of a GM of brand, Nat Placco, and the agency, we were like, and I can be sometimes a little bit too gung-ho. I was like, no, we're just going to go for it. And then what was it? Delta? No, what was Christmas? Remember when we got one of the strands came back? Like we were sort of opening up, and then around Christmas time, maybe 2021.
Yeah.
I can't remember the years. COVID.
There's Omicron or Delta. I can't remember.
Omicron, yeah. And it was sort of like, oh, we'll be okay. And then all of a sudden it was like, this is not okay, and everything came off the table. So yeah, we had to press pause and stop it then, and then we rolled it out market by market. So the UK was able opening, so we were able to go there, the US and Canada, and then finally Australia. So we were able to go out with that messaging. So that were the nuggets, the insights, and then almost burnt my fingers a couple of times going too early. I think it would have been okay because it would have been an opportunity to talk, but it just wouldn't have made sense, I think, at that time.
Yeah, and I've gone and watched. I've seen the 30-second version that you have on YouTube. But tell me, what were the formats, the mediums, the channels? Was this a big TV thing? Was it sort of online? What was the sort of campaign built on?
Yeah. Well, it's different by market. So we have, as I said, the 3 key markets: US or North America, UK, and Australia. Largely, probably the biggest investment was out of home. We saw an opportunity both from price at that point of time, but also big, rich medium to show beautiful imagery of our trips and to have that message, and also to go broader. We were wanting to go broader with the message because it was about travel and not just about Intrepid. So a big chunk of the activation was around out of home placements. We also then backed that up with a range of digital video placements, showing those videos. We did radio, podcast. We moved eventually. It sort of evolved in the iterations into cinema and across the board into print. But a large part of it was really focused at out of home, and that was the big medium because we were able to get a big, huge image and have that message. What are we trying to show is like rich experiences, like uniqueness, distinction from like we are sort of pushing away from the standard holiday that, we want to show people engaging with local interactions because I think too often travel advertising is very generic and we probably fall into trap it's the destination, picture of Machu Picchu logo. So we're really trying to get more experiences, people connecting and engaging. But, I think because travel's so cool, people just resonate to what looks good anyway. So imagery really moves.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really interesting. And so in terms of travel is back for good, let's talk some of the results. I know, you've talked about, huge increases in branded search volumes and traffic and bookings, and we've obviously talked about profitability. Was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything that didn't work? Any sort of...
Yeah, definitely. I think... So I'll talk with what worked and then what didn't work. So one of the surprising things, James, that we saw was an increase in digital conversion. And this is when I talk about the performance brand thing affecting each other. We saw that in the markets we did branding, conversion increased.
Wow.
And we didn't expect that to happen. But what we think happened, and again, we tried to prove this, was because they'd seen us and there's a bit of gravitas that comes with being able to afford a billboard, and that they trust that they can do it. So the hypothesis that we had is that we saw increased conversion performance because customers were more likely to trust us at that pointy end. Yeah. So that was a complete surprise. I did not expect, it wasn't any of my KPIs. I was like, just happens, very, very happy for that to occur. And we see that now whenever we do branding is that, we see a jump in conversion in those key markets where it's done. So that's straight away. That's not even a future thing. That's like a straight away thing. So it was super surprising. Wow. One of the F-ups was where we did it. Yeah, so we've probably learned that for some of these activations, we have to go into markets where there is a propensity of, it makes so much sense when I say it out loud, I feel like an idiot, but a propensity to be more customers that will travel on our trips. Yeah. And it goes back to just basic customer targeting. But we went into the UK, largely did London. London's the fastest way to get to 1 million people in the world. Yeah. Like you go there, sort of like New York, you can make it anywhere. Yeah. But London even more like hyper, you can get great advertising, get heaps of market. There's everyone there. We moved tried to get to Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow. Didn't resonate in the same way it did in London.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because there isn't the same amount of people and we didn't see the same performance. Look, in the future, yes, once we continue to grow in a different stage, but we jumped the gun and we didn't get that right. The other thing too that I'm more and more learning and we're seeing is we need to stand out more. Yes, again, like so many of travel is very similar and we're continuing to do that. How do we make our brand stick in people's mind? How do we get them to remember us, have a good emotion and think about us? So the ongoing thing and the challenge I've set to the team and everyone is how do we stand out more? Yeah, and how do we entertain more? Because I think over the long run, if other brands see us, they can copy us. They can go buy that ad, go do that. And, it's going there. There's, other companies that do Vietnam tours. There's other companies that do Morocco. So that learning is continuing to drum home to me is how do we stand out?
Yeah, that's fascinating because the name of this show, right? Own the moment. How do you sort of own that moment of attention that you are given from a customer, and how do you not squander it? Is there anything you can share there? I understand if there's sort of nothing there, but what sorts of things are you thinking about in terms of standing out? Is it types of content? Is it messaging? Is it storytelling? Is it assets? What are ways that you guys are exploring standing out? Because I agree that's the big challenge is how to not be too generic and how to be distinctive.
Yeah, look, I think I'll talk about a way we stood out in the past and one where we'll stand out in the future. We've massively focused on our customer care. Yeah, and this is probably not a standing out from an advertising point of view.
Sure.
But if you went to third-party review sites, a lot of our sector probably got smashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not being that and customer focused. We're endeavoring to stand out and making it as easy as possible for customers to book, engage, interact with Intrepid. So if they have a problem, that we deal with it as soon as possible. Don't get that perfect, but we're trying to stand out. And you'll see now in a lot of third-party sites that we are higher there from that point of view. So in an area where we all do the same thing, where there's a similarity, we're trying to stand out from a customer care point of view.
Makes total sense.
That's looking back, and we've made that big change. During COVID, we were found wanting there. I think we got smashed initially. We weren't able to give our customers what they needed fast enough. But since then, we've now been able to do that. And why that's been so strong for us is I speak to customers. I make phone calls and have conversations with customers every other week. And the thing that I found that this is where the performance marketing brand thing doesn't show up is customers said that, and this would never show up in tracking. They said they go to third-party review sites and social media to check that you're real. So it's not that you have the best star rating, it's that you're real and that 100%. You fix shit when it goes wrong. Yeah, and it was like the guy, one of them says, I do not follow you on Instagram, I do not care about you on Instagram, but I checked that you were real, that was in line with what I thought it would be, and if customers had complained, that you fixed those complaints. And it was like, whoa, and that was every 10 customers, 8 people use it that way.
Yeah. Well, I just like an anecdote from me. I had 2 flights booked in March of 2020, both via online travel agents. Went to go and what happened there? Went to go and get a refund. Shut up shop. It's like it was obviously some very sort of temporary shell online agent, and they just didn't pick up the phone and didn't reply to emails, and those are gone. So I think that makes a lot of sense, is like actually the value of just being real and being a brand that, like you say, maybe they don't care about the content and the story, but being able to actually just go and say, this is a company with real people, with an office, with a phone number. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and little things like we'll find, 1-star reviews and just reach out to people. Hey, that's not good enough. And even if they may never become a 5-star, that's fine. But at least in the future, customers will say, well, at least this company owns when it F's up and is happy to listen and work with it. 100%. You're not going to make everyone happy all the time, but you've got to be able to, show, I think, and especially for us as we're growing and not everyone, we don't have a physical thing, it's on the, there's not always a physical thing. You've got to create those trust moments. So that's been really good. I think from a future looking for point of view, I think, don't know. Probably too early to say, but it's the agenda I'm pushing. One of the big things is doing for us is more of the right things more often, just relentlessly doing that. Not too many shiny things, not shopping listing, more of the right thing often. Know your customer, get more customers to know you, make it easier to book, entertain, give them, the basics, like just as, those people we mentioned before. But I think we need to stand out more in a pretty crowded space because, there's heaps of travel companies and everyone has different experiences. Like, as I said, Vietnam, a lot of people be advertising and talking about Vietnam, but we do it very differently. How do I get that to stand out? Yeah, and how do we get people to want to do that? Because that, I think, is our big opportunity. Yeah,
no, that makes a lot of sense. Leigh, I could chat all day with you about this stuff. It's so interesting, but I want to let you get back to all of that work. So I want to move on to the quick fire round. And I want to start with maybe a tricky question. Your favorite marketing campaign from any brand of all time? I've
been thinking about this one, and you may laugh, and I don't know if everyone will remember this, but mine is Smith's Chips, the Gobblegock.
Yeah, I definitely remember that.
He's this little monster, and he'd be like, chippies, and he'd run into parties, and me and my sisters would just run around the house being like, chippies. Yeah. And I still remember, and I still love crinkle cut chips because of that, 20 years ago. And it was ridiculous, but it was it's like talks all those things. It was like a physical asset, like this monster that was attached to the chip. It was ridiculous. Yep. And it was funny because it was entertaining. This little chippy monster would run up at a party and steal Smith's. Was it Smith's or maybe it was Samboy back then? But the come and steal the chips. And salt and vinegar crinkle cut Smiths, because of the Gobblegock, are still my favourite, and I'm almost 40, and that was from when I was 7 or 8 years of age. Yeah, well, it's funny. My last job, that was actually a custom Slack emoji that we had in the in the company Slack. And it's funny. I had Orlando Wood on the podcast a few months ago, and he wrote this great book, Lemon, all about left and right brain. And his whole argument is that in the golden age of advertising, the 80s and the 90s. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm sure we could throw 20 examples of classic, whether it's, Slippery Little Sucker, 13, 13, 32, Not Happy Jan. Yeah, Ma, the Rains Have Come or whatever. We were much better at that as an industry before, and now we're in this very sort of, different era where distinctive assets are, and maybe we're at a turning point, but at least the last 10 years, very, very sort of, it's funny because the Gobble, that almost would seem daggy if you did that today. It seems retro and weird, but it's funny how, I reckon it would work. I reckon it would work because it would be so different and have a little retroness. Nostalgia works, Absolutely. And I think even if you think over the last 10 years where, this
right brains, like logical, analytical thinking has taken over advertising. There are still brands that do. I mean, I had Jamie Pete from Aldi on the show talking about, Kevin the Carrot. They've got a little, and even with Susan and Come and Say G'day, it's a CGI kangaroo. And like you said, everyone laughed at it, but it worked because, those distinctive assets, those, physical things, leaning into nostalgia and humor. I mean, I think all the time about just the beer ads from the 90s in Australia. I mean, they're just classic. They're like seared into my memory. I couldn't even drink beer then, but they were so memorable.
They were doing their job then, weren't they? That's part of the evil and some of those beer ads.
No, maybe there's a moral and ethical side there, but no, look, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Being 10 and being like singing the VB ads, like, come on, ridiculous.
But they've done well, obviously. What about the Leigh? What's the best brand in the world right now? And I'll just preface that by saying, maybe best / your favorite.
Yeah, I know, because you're like, does everyone sort of say quite often like Patagonia, Nike?
Yeah, Apple, Nike, Patagonia. So give us something that maybe is less obvious if one pops into your mind.
Yeah. Well, I've got I'm a big beer fan, as you can see from the picture behind me, which is a Toronto brewery, which is Bellwoods Brewery. But my favourite, and I think the coolest beer company is not a beer company, but is a beer company. It's Heaps Normal.
Yeah.
They do non-alcoholic beer. And from not being a category 3 years ago to now taking heaps of shelf space at some of the biggest beer retailers, amazing job. And
insane.
I think they're almost at the point that like Keep Cup defined that sector. Heaps Normal's like the leader, I think, in Australia from a non-alcoholic beverage point of view. I think their branding's super sharp. I think all the marketing they do is right aligned with their brand, and the way that they've also taken on board the cause and the positive change they want to make in the world and advocate to normalise, having a good time without alcohol is brilliant. And I think the way that they've championed that has been amazing. And it's gone from like not being a staple in mine and my friends' fridges to now that brand from nowhere being on most of my friends' fridges. And if it's not them, it's somebody else, but it's probably because of Heaps Normal that they're now drinking those other beers.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've got so much to say about. I think even the details with Heaps Normal. I think the name is just genius. It's normal. I love the tagline, "Too good to be wasted." Like it's just absolutely brilliant.
And they get the Aussiness with the heaps.
Yes, it's distinctive. and I'll tell you right now, my fridge is full of the Heaps Normal Hazy Day XPAs, and it's fascinating. We were talking at work the other day about 5 years ago, like. I'm not going to say you would have been ostracized for drinking non-alcoholic beer, but it definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't in the culture. If you went on a Friday with work colleagues and said no thanks, like there'd be banter but I actually, and maybe in some circles there still are, but at least in mine there just aren't anymore. It's completely normal, and it's come from nowhere. I agree, and I think there are now a lot of other great brands. I bought last week Tinnies. I don't know if you've tried Tinnies yet.
Yeah, that one's delicious.
Yeah,
and the other one, like our office has like half the fridge is is it the Better Beer? What's that?
Yeah,
the creative guys.
They sponsor. They sponsor one of my favorite actually dad podcasts. Which I'll send you the link. Yeah, no, so that's a great one, Leigh. I think, Heaps Normal's a really, really good shout. All right, what about the most overrated trend in marketing right now? What are you sick of?
Oh, there's two that I would say it's supposed to be short round, isn't it? Well, one is purpose marketing or sustainability when you don't actually do the chops. Like if your business isn't in that space, don't talk about it. Don't go, posting about stuff just to get your brand out there on social media. If you've got a skin in the game and it's important to you, 100% advocate like crazy for the change you want to see in the world. But if you're just doing it because it's the right thing to do from like your brand point of view, but your brand doesn't have any skin in the game, just a waste of time.
Yeah.
If it does, and it's got to go out and champion it. And then the other one that I hate is just shopping list marketing, where people do absolutely every single thing in marketing. So I'm going to do PPC, social, events, brand, everything. Just waste of money. You've got to have a strategy, and you just see lots of brands or marketers doing everything like shopping list, everything, rather than just picking the couple of key things that are going to actually stick to your strategy and make a change. So purpose where there's no purpose, and marketing where it's just doing everything in lieu of good strategy.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think those are two really, really good ones. What about the opposite? What about the most underrated trend? What's still underrated or not talked about by enough marketers?
I think the trend that we start on, but like doing the right thing over and over and over and over and over again is so underrated. Like, I don't know, finance do audits, they do accounts, they do it over and over and over again.
Right.
Marketing too often is like, no, chase the new shiny thing. No, it's like relentless. What does your brand stand for? Show up, get more people, make it easy for customers to book. Do the right thing over and over and over and over again is so important, but you don't see, like, we have a problem that so many CMOs last 1 or 2 years.
Yes.
Right? So it makes it virtually impossible. And they come in with a shiny agenda and they're basically told to break shit and do something shiny, and then either it works, and it probably wasn't because of them, it was the previous CMO, or they get kicked out the door. And it just creates horrific habits, lack of company knowledge. So, yeah, for me, it's doing the right stuff over and over again, and understanding that, you know, you wouldn't get your CFO or your chief operator or someone in supply chains to go break everything,
right?
You know, throw it out the window. It's ridiculous, but for some reason, it's expected of us.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like I saw a meme the other day, and it's like, you know, the first thing the CMO comes in, and it's like, you know, change the logo, redo the website, make a brand video. It's like, you know, and then get fired 2 years later because you didn't actually give anything the time to work. Yeah, I mean, you'd be a brave man taking on a CMO role today, I'll tell you what. Last question, Leigh. Who should I have on the show next? Who do you love in marketing that, you know, I should be exploring these themes with?
Well, selfishly, I'd love one of the founders, I think Andy Miller from Heaps Normal.
Yes.
I don't know him, but I follow him on social media. If you get one of those guys to tell their story, I would love to listen to that. Because they've started a category, or not started, they're at the bleeding edge of a category.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of stuff right, and I'd just love to hear that story. And being a beerhead myself, I am very interested selfishly, and they're doing cool stuff, and it's a small brand that's becoming big, and they're doing interesting things. And I think also too, you see a lot of the sharp Brits and his purpose is rubbish vibe, but I think there is a place, and if companies are doing it because they want to create a change, that there is a space for it, and they do a bloody good job of it.
And I think just a last point on Heaps Normal, I think what works is it doesn't feel preachy. Not that there's anything wrong with, as you say, if you have a cause and you're really passionate about going and doing it, that's great. But I think Heaps Normal feels so it's clearly a good cause and has good purpose, but it does feels like it invites you in rather than projects at you or something. There's something there that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I suppose also too, as again, one of these things when you say it out loud, it makes sense. They have to, if they didn't do that, they wouldn't have a category. So it's almost like business critical.
Yeah.
So if they don't champion, healthy drinking, they don't have a business. But I don't know. I'm just speaking for them, so they could tell me I'm a complete idiot. But it makes sense that that's the category, so they've got a champion for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you hear this somehow, and I'll be hunting you down, I'm coming for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just randomly send it in his LinkedIn and go, hey, I mentioned you. Sorry, you may have no interest, but apologies.
There's the strategy. I like it. Leigh, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it, mate.
No, I appreciate it, James. Thanks for having me. And if anyone's got any questions or things I've said, just hit me up. I'm happy to have a chat.
Thanks for listening to the Own the Moment podcast. If you liked this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss upcoming episodes. And to suggest a guest or provide feedback, please visit our dedicated podcast hub at ownthemomentpod.com.